Yemi sat by the window when the postman handed her a golden envelope. Her hands trembled a little as she opened it. Inside was a beautiful invitation to the Royal Heritage Gala, a grand event where her late father's name would be remembered and celebrated. Her heart swelled with emotion. Her father had worked so hard for his name, and now it was being honoured. But just as she smiled, her eyes caught something in the corner of the invitation. Small words, almost hidden. Strictly for couple. Spouses only. No +1. Her smile slowly faded. She read it again to be sure. It wasn't a mistake. They didn't want single people. They didn't want her, not unless she came with a husband. Her heart sank. The same elite society that had always looked down on her was now making sure she stayed out, unless she fit their idea of worthy. Yemi wasn't surprised. This was how they operated. Cold rules hidden in golden covers. She looked around her apartment, feeling suddenly alone. Dio, the man she had once loved, the one she thought she would attend the gala with. He had left her just weeks ago. No fight, no goodbye, just vanished like she was nothing. She held the envelope tighter, unsure whether to cry or throw it away. Her father would have wanted her there, but how could she go now? The same people who had whispered behind her back now had a rule that screamed she wasn't enough on her own. Yemi sat still for a long time, staring at the invitation. Her father's name deserved to be honoured, but she couldn't bring herself to walk in alone and feel humiliated. What hurt more wasn't just the rule. It was the reminder that society always measured women by who stood next to them, not by their own strength. And Yemi, she had no one next to her, or so she thought. The dress was ready. It hung on the stand like a quiet promise. Gold silk shimmered under the light, carefully stitched with traditional beads that sparkled like stars. The fabric had been chosen weeks ago. The design was made with love and memory, something her father would have been proud to see her wear. Her stylist had spent hours making sure everything was perfect. The makeup, the jewelry, the shoes, all of it was in place. But Yemi? She sat in silence. Her fingers shook slightly as she touched the dress. Not from cold, but from something deeper. Fear, doubt, that heavy feeling of being seen but not truly accepted. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, beautiful on the outside, but broken on the inside. Everyone expected her to shine that night, to walk in with her head held high. But they didn't know the truth, that her heart wasn't ready. Her eyes looked strong, but behind them lived pain. Not because she wasn't enough, but because the world kept saying she needed a man to be enough. She thought of the rule again. Spouses only. Her chest tightened. She had always believed in love, in kindness, in building something real. But here she was, judged not for her strength or her father's legacy, but for not having someone beside her. What kind of world did that to a woman? Yemi looked at her phone. No calls from Dio, not even a message. He had left like she never mattered. And now, as the big day approached, she was expected to show up and smile like her heart hadn't been stepped on. How do you do that? How do you celebrate something so personal when everything around you screams, "You're not enough on your own"? She touched her necklace, her father's old pendant. It gave her a little courage. But even that didn't stop the thoughts racing through her head. People would stare. They would whisper. Some would pity her. Others would mock her behind perfect smiles. She had never feared loneliness before. But now, the thought of walking into that hall alone, where couples held hands and smiled for photos, it made her feel small, invisible, like an outsider, in a world that only celebrated women when they were someone's wife. Her dress was ready. It was a dream. But dreams meant little when your heart was still gathering its pieces, and Yemi wasn't sure if hers could carry her through that night. Siba was always there, but never in the way. He walked 3 steps behind Yemi, like a silent shadow, calm, focused, always watching, always alert. He was hired to protect her, nothing more. He wasn't loud or chatty. He didn't ask questions. He didn't comment on her choices. He simply did his job with quiet respect. Yemi barely noticed him most days. He blended into the background like part of the furniture. But that night, something changed. She was sitting in front of her mirror, her gold dress still untouched on the hanger. Her eyes were red. She had tried not to cry, but the pressure, the judgment, the loneliness, it all came crashing in. She felt small and unwanted. The room was quiet, except for the soft sound of her breath shaking. That's when Siba knocked once and stepped inside. He saw her reflection in the mirror. The woman everyone expected to shine was falling apart. He didn't look away. He didn't pretend not to notice. Instead, he stood there for a moment. then softly asked just one question. Do you still want to go? No lecture, no pity, just that. Yemi didn't speak. She just nodded, wiping her tears quickly like she was ashamed. But Siba didn't flinch. He didn't treat her like she was weak. He simply stepped forward, not like a guard, but like someone who understood. In that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them. He didn't offer false promises or big words. He didn't say everything would be okay. What he gave her was something deeper. His presence, solid, calm, safe. He went to the dress stand and gently took the gold gown into his hands. Then he looked at her, not as her protector, but as someone who saw her pain and wanted her to stand tall again. He didn't ask for permission. He just stood with her, not behind, but beside. Yemi's eyes welled up again, but this time, it wasn't just sadness. It was a strange warmth. For the first time in days, she didn't feel completely alone. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, without needing her to explain anything. That night, Siba stopped being just the man in the background. He became the quiet strength she didn't know she needed. And though no one else noticed the shift, Yemi felt it deep in her bones. He wasn't just there to protect her body anymore. He was there for her. Yemi took a deep breath as the car stopped in front of the grand hall. The lights were bright, the carpet rolled out, and cameras flashed from every corner. People in fine clothes were arriving with their spouses, smiling for pictures, holding hands. Her dress sparkled just right, and her steps were calm, but inside, her heart beat like a drum. She walked forward slowly, Siba beside her, still calm as ever. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind, how she would smile, nod politely, and walk in with grace, but nothing prepared her for what happened next. At the gate stood 2 security guards holding the guest list. As she approached, one of them looked up, then back down at the list. He frowned slightly, confused. Then he asked the question she had been dreading. "Where is your husband, madam?" The words hit her like a slap. People turned their heads. She could feel eyes on her. Her throat dried up, and for a second, she forgot how to breathe. She looked around, unsure what to say. Should she lie? Should she walk away? Should she fight? Her heart sank. All her strength started to fade. Her hand moved slightly, ready to turn back, but before she could speak, Siba stepped forward. Without saying a word, he pulled out a ring from his pocket. Time froze. Gasps came from around them. The photographers stopped clicking. A few guests whispered, trying to understand what was happening. Even the guard raised his eyebrows. Siba's face was calm, but his voice was clear and steady. "If it's a husband, you need to let her in. Then let me be that. Today." Yemi's eyes widened in shock. She hadn't expected this. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. He turned to her, gently took her hand, and slid the ring onto her finger. It wasn't about romance, and it wasn't for show. It was a quiet stand, a message to everyone watching. She didn't need saving. She just needed someone to stand beside her, without asking for anything in return. In that one moment, Siba did what no one else had the courage to do. He gave her dignity. He gave her back her place. And without another word, they walked past the gate together. Heads turned, mouths stayed open, and the rules that once tried to keep her out couldn't stop her anymore. The moment Siba pulled out the ring, everything around them seemed to stop. People gasped loudly. A few phones went up, flashing pictures. The soft music in the background suddenly felt too loud, and the quiet buzz of guests turned into shocked whispers. Even Mrs. Olawale, one of the oldest and most respected women in the elite circle, who never lost her composure, nearly choked on her wine. But Siba? He stood tall, his face calm, his voice steady. He turned to the crowd and spoke gently but clearly, his words cutting through the noise like truth always does. "She shouldn't need a man to walk into her father's legacy," he said. "But if the rules demand one, then let her legacy be honored." His words hit deep. Some looked away in guilt, others stared in silence, unsure how to react. Because in that moment, he wasn't just defending Yemi. He was reminding everyone what true respect looks like, not because of money, or status, or name, but because she deserved it. He turned to Yemi again and gently took her hand. With no drama, no show-off smile, he slipped the ring onto her finger. It wasn't a flashy ring. It didn't need to be. It was real, simple, and powerful. Yemi stood frozen. Her heart was pounding so loud she could barely hear the world around her. Her eyes stung with emotion, and she couldn't tell if she wanted to laugh or cry, or maybe do both. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a fairy tale moment. It was something deeper. It was someone choosing to stand by her when the world told her to sit down. She looked at Siba, this man who had always stayed in the background, never asking for attention, never trying to be seen. And yet, here he was, stepping into the spotlight, not for himself, but for her. The guards at the gate stepped aside. No more questions, no more doubts. And as they walked into the hall together, her hand still in his, the crowd parted, still whispering, but this time not with judgment, with awe. She didn't just walk in with a man. She walked in with someone who believed in her voice, her worth, and her right to be there. And in that one quiet, strong moment, Siba gave Yemi something even more powerful than love. He gave her respect. The moment Yemi and Siba stepped into the hall, the room fell into a strange silence. Heads turned, whispers floated in the air, but no one dared to speak too loudly. The golden lights above shimmered like stars, and the grand hall looked just as beautiful as she had imagined. But something inside Yemi had changed. She wasn't walking in to prove anything anymore. She was walking in with peace, quiet pride. Siba walked beside her, not holding her hand, not pretending to be more than he was, but standing with her like a wall of calm in a room full of noise. They moved through the crowd slowly, and while eyes followed them, Yemi kept her head high. The pain she had carried before didn't feel as heavy anymore. The music started again, a soft, graceful tune. Couples moved to the dance floor. Yemi stood to the side at first, watching. She didn't expect anything, didn't ask, but Siba gently offered his hand. No words, just a small gesture that said, "You don't have to stand alone tonight." She placed her hand in his. They danced, slowly, gently, not like two people in love, but like two souls who had fought through storms and were now finally breathing. There was no pressure in their steps, no fake smiles, just peace, a kind of comfort that didn't need to be explained. Yemi's heart felt light, almost like she had gone back in time to the days when her father would lift her in his arms and say, "You're my brave girl." Later, when the moment for her speech came, she walked to the podium with her shoulders back and her chin lifted. The crowd grew quiet again. They were waiting to see what the unmarried girl had to say. But Yemi didn't shake. She didn't stutter. Her voice was clear. "My father taught me strength," she began, her eyes scanning the faces before her. "And tonight, I brought mine with me." For a second, the room stayed still, and then the applause came, soft at first, then louder. No one laughed, no one whispered. They listened, because in that moment, they didn't see a woman without a husband. They saw a woman who had walked through pain with dignity, who didn't need anyone's permission to belong. And as Yemi stepped down from the stage, she didn't feel small anymore. She felt free. Dio stood quietly at the back of the hall, half hidden behind a tall pillar. He hadn't planned to attend, but curiosity got the better of him. When he saw Yemi's name on the list of speakers, something inside him pulled him toward the event. He thought maybe she wouldn't show up, or maybe she'd come looking tired, alone, trying too hard to fit in. A part of him expected to see the same woman he had walked away from, broken, unsure, waiting for love to make her whole. But that's not who walked in. From his spot in the shadows, Dio saw her enter, not clinging to anyone, not looking around for approval. She walked with calm steps, head held high, and beside her was a man the world didn't know, but who stood like he had known her soul for years. Dio's eyes followed every move. The whispers around the room didn't bother her. The flashing cameras didn't shake her. And when the music played, she didn't stay on the side, pretending to smile. She danced, not like someone trying to show off, but like someone who had finally remembered who she was. She didn't glow because of her dress or jewelry. She glowed because she had healed. He watched as she stood on the stage and gave her speech. Her voice didn't tremble. Her words didn't chase pity. She spoke like a woman who had rebuilt herself with her own hands. Each sentence carried pride, not bitterness, gratitude, not regret. Dio swallowed hard. He had thought she would fall apart after he left. He believed he had been the best thing in her life. But standing there now, hidden in the back, he saw a version of Yemi he never helped create. She had become someone even stronger without him. For the first time, he realized she had never needed him to shine. He had just made the mistake of thinking her light came from being with him. His hands stayed in his pockets, and he didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't try to go up to her, because what could he say now? She wasn't the same woman he left, and he was just a part of her past now. All he could do was watch and wonder what would have happened if he had stayed. But deep down, He already knew. She still would have grown, just not with him. The gala was over. The music had stopped. The lights had dimmed, and the crowd had slowly disappeared into the night. Yemi and Siba sat in the car, the city lights flashing quietly through the windows as they drove through the quiet streets. But inside the car, it was completely still. No music, no words, just the sound of the engine and the soft hum of the tires on the road. Yemi looked down at her hand, where the simple ring still sat on her finger. Her fingers moved slowly, touching the metal like it didn't feel real. The whole night felt like a dream. The walk into the hall, the dancing, the speech, the stares, the whispers, and Siba, always there beside her, steady and calm. She turned her head slightly, her voice barely a whisper. Was this pretend? Siba didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the road, his hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. He didn't look confused, and he didn't seem surprised by her question. He had probably known it was coming. After a pause, he replied quietly, "Only if you want it to be." His voice was soft, but there was no doubt in it. Yemi's heart skipped. She turned fully toward him now, watching his face in the shadows. He wasn't smiling, and he wasn't trying to charm her. He was just being real, like he always had. There was something about the way he said it, like he was giving her the choice, not pushing her, not asking for anything, just leaving the door open. Her eyes drifted back to the ring. She thought about all the things that had happened, not just tonight, but in the past few weeks. The pain of being left, the fear of being judged, the weight of walking into a hall where she wasn't supposed to belong. And then, the moment Siba stepped forward, not because he had to, but because he chose to. It hadn't been pretend for her, not really. It had been real the moment he saw her tears and didn't walk away. The moment he said nothing, but meant everything. The moment he made her feel like she didn't have to fight alone. The car kept moving, but her world had shifted. She didn't answer him right then. She didn't have to, because sometimes silence says more than words ever can. And in that quiet shared moment, between city lights and tired hearts, something real had already begun. A month passed, but people were still talking. The gala had ended, but the story hadn't. Everywhere Yemi went, people whispered. Her name was in blogs, magazines, and gossip corners. Videos from that night had gone viral. The moment Siba put the ring on her finger, the way they danced, her powerful speech. It was all over the internet, but with all the attention came the questions. Was it real? Is he really just a bodyguard? Maybe he's a billionaire pretending to be one of the staff. Maybe it was just a stunt to get noticed. Everyone had their own version of the story, their own theories. Some people admired it, some laughed, some just didn't believe it. Yemi didn't respond, neither did Siba. They both stayed quiet, living their lives, not trying to prove anything to anyone. But the noise didn't stop. Some thought it was just a show, a plan to get attention, a fake ring, a made-up love story. Then, one quiet Sunday morning, the buzz shifted again. People across the city received soft white envelopes. Elegant, simple. The names on the front caught everyone's attention immediately. Yemi and Siba. Inside, a gentle message read, "A celebration of choice, not convention. No extra titles, no grand claims, no dramatic promises, just truth." It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It wasn't about wealth, or looks, or fame. It was about something that couldn't be explained by the media or captured in videos. It was about choosing someone who stood beside you when the world told you to sit down. It was about quiet love, real respect, a bond that had nothing to do with power or money, and everything to do with presence and peace. As people opened the invitations, their voices changed. They stopped guessing. They stopped mocking, because deep down, everyone wants a love that doesn't need to shout to be heard. And Yemi and Siba, they didn't shout. They simply chose each other, and that was enough. 1 year later, the Royal Heritage Gala returned. Same shining lights, same elegant hall, same strict rules. Spouses only, no plus ones. The crowd began to arrive in expensive clothes and perfect pairs, just like before. But this time, something was different. This time, the name at the top of the invitation didn't belong to a man, a title, or an old, powerful family. It said, Yemi Foundation, host and patron. The girl they once blocked at the gate now owned the event. Yemi stood tall near the entrance, smiling gently as guests arrived. She wasn't just attending anymore. She was the reason they were all there. Her father's legacy lived on, but now It stood beside her own. Her name was not attached to anyone else. It stood alone and strong. The hall filled with music and chatter. Lights sparkled. The same rules were printed at the door, but they no longer held the same weight. Not to Yemi. Just as the event was starting, something caught her eye. A young woman stood at the gate, nervous, holding her invitation. The guard looked at her and then back at the list. "Are you here with your husband?" he asked. The girl's smile faded. I came alone," she said softly. The guard started to shake his head, ready to turn her away, just like they had once done to Yemi. Yemi didn't hesitate. She stepped forward without a word, walked straight to the door, and gently placed her hand on the girl's arm. The girl looked up, confused, her eyes full of worry, maybe even embarrassment. She hadn't expected help. She thought she was going to be left outside, forgotten, like her presence didn't matter. But Yemi smiled, the same kind of smile that Siba once gave her when she needed strength. Then she opened the door wide and whispered softly to the girl, so only she could hear. "You don't need a ring to belong. You just need your voice." The girl blinked, tears quietly filling her eyes. She stepped forward, and together, they walked into the hall. No one questioned them, no one dared, because the girl they once blocked had changed everything, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough on her own. And this time, the legacy didn't just belong to her father, it belonged to her, to strength, to choice, to every voice that refused to stay silent. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll without sharing it. Tag a woman who walks in strength, not shadow, because sometimes the greatest love stories start with choosing yourself. Comment, voice, if you believe no one needs a ring to belong. Share this if you've ever felt underestimated and prove them wrong.